Hi, I'm Beth, and welcome to the Somerset County Library's Personal Enrichment Series online. Today, we're going to be talking about upcycling, specifically t-shirts. Now, I don't know if you're like my family, but we have a ton of t-shirts laying around. In fact, I have a whole hamper full of them, and most of them aren't something that we could just sell or get rid of because they're staff shirts from a place that we used to work at. And most people don't want to walk around with staff stamped across their back or the logo from this particular company. So, what to do with them? And I hate throwing anything away. So rather than having them end up in a landfill someplace, we're going to upcycle them. You've probably heard the term upcycle or seen it and wondered, what is upcycling? Well, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, upcycling is taking something and recycling it from one purpose into something that has more value. So in this case, we're taking some t-shirts that really don't have any value to anybody, and we're going to create something that has more value to it, something that will be more useful. So some of the t-shirts you have might have something that, like this one was from an aquarium that I visited, so it has like some sentimental value to it. Others might be gifts from family members that got your size a little wrong, or maybe in this country the extra large isn't really extra large. And it's a beautiful t-shirt, so I don't want to just get rid of it. So I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can upcycle a t-shirt. First, we're going to make some t-shirt yarn. Then we're going to make a reusable t-shirt bag. And then finally, some pet toys. So let's get started. The first way we're going to upcycle our t-shirts is by making some t-shirt yarn. And I don't know if you've seen, there's different stuff that you can do with t-shirt yarn. You can make baskets, rugs, pretty much anything that you can think of. You can use it to crochet, knit, weave. And we're going to start off, we're going to cut off this seam at the bottom of the shirt. And we're going to save that. We'll be using those scraps later to make some toys for our pets. Okay, and then we're going to cut just underneath the sleeve. And it's best to try to do this with t-shirts that don't have a design on them, at least not one that is like the plasticky stuff, like this staff is plasticky printed on there, because it doesn't pull very well. After we've made our cuts, we're going to be pulling the yarn to make it, or pulling the string to make the yarn. So you don't want anything that's going to be plasticky like this. Now if it's worn, it might work because it's already broken down. But for the most part, you want to use the part of the t-shirt that doesn't have a design on it. And we're going to fold our tube. We got a great big tube here. And just a great big tube. And we're going to take that and we're going to fold it in such a way. This is a really cool trick. First time I tried to make t-shirt yarn, I tried to do like a spiral, cutting up from the bottom and just sort of like making my way around the shirt. But this is really cool. First time I did this, it was like, oh, awesome. Okay, I'm going to fold that in half this way. So I have the side, not really seams, but the sides of the t-shirt folded towards each other. And I've left probably about an inch at the top here. And then what we're going to do is using dressmaker's chalk. I'm going to make marks about every inch. Now, depending on how thick you want your yarn, will depend on how wide apart your cuts are. If your cuts are wider apart, you're going to get a thicker yarn. If they're closer together, you'll get a thinner yarn. One thing you don't want to do is make it less than half an inch, because when it gets too narrow and then we start to pull, it can tear the t-shirt. And we don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to make some marks here. I'm making mine about an inch apart. If you don't have dressmaker's chalk, that's fine. You can use any chalk, anything. You just want to make a small mark so that you can tell where to cut. And if you want to keep your cuts even, make a second pair of marks. And then we sort of like connect the dots. Okay, so we have our marks, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut up to that first fold. We're not going all the way to the end, we're just going to cut up to and through that first fold. Now Meow is going to play with my tape measure. Okay, so we're up to that first fold, and we're going to cut through that, leaving this last part still attached. And if your strands aren't completely straight, that's perfectly all right. It gives the yarn a little bit of texture. And we're going to continue doing this all the way across, and then I'll show you the really cool trick to getting one long strand of t-shirt yarn. Okay, so I've finished cutting all the way across my t-shirt. I have great big long fringes here. Okay, the really cool part, I'm going to unfold this. Okay, now you see this part here that is still attached between the two sides. we're going to start making some diagonal cuts. So we're going to go from the bottom of this string up to the bottom of the strand opposite. And then we're going to just continue doing that all the way up. So you're going from the bottom of one strand to the bottom of the next one. One last cut. Okay, now watch this. This is so cool. You have one long strand of t-shirt. Isn't that cool? Okay, so now we need to start pulling it to make our yarn. So all you're going to do is just start at one end and just give it a tug. You do that all the way up. You can see my end here was a little thicker than the rest of it, but you can see it's getting that curling onto itself and creating like string or yarn. So I just need to continue doing that all the way through, and then we'll have our ball of yarn. And if there are any quilters out there, if you have one of those cutters that sort of like a pizza type cutter, that'll probably work even better for cutting the strands than scissors. I think my mom has one of those. Next time I do this, I'm going to have to borrow her cutter. Save my hand a little bit. Just keep pulling it through, pulling it through. So there were a few places where I got the cut a little bit too thin, and when you get to those places, you just want to make sure you don't pull too tight or too hard, because it will pull your yarn to pieces. So we got our yarn, and I'll just make a ball so it'll be ready to use. I have one ball of t-shirt yarn ready to go. Now we're going to make a reusable t-shirt bag. And to get started, we're going to fold our t-shirt in half like this. And we're doing this because we want both sides to be the same, or at least as close as the same as we can get them. And what we're going to do is make our cuts for the handles. So we have our t-shirt folded in half, and we're just going to start cutting on the inside of the armhole seam. And save the sleeves because we'll do something with those later. Now we need to make the opening for the bag. Okay, and that's all there is to it. We have our openings. And now we got to do something with the bottom. Now there are multiple ways that you can secure the bottom so that you can actually use it as a bag. And I'm going to show you two. I'm going to show you a no-sew version and a sewed version. So for this version, since it's such a long t-shirt, I am going to do the no-sew version. And I have one started here. And what I did is I made some marks here with my dressmaker's chalk, about 1 inch apart, and this last little bit is like a 1/2 inch. So it's like just the perfect width for what we're going to do. And what we're going to do is make a straight cut up. And we're going to make fringes. And you can make your fringes as long as you want them. Let's see, I'm probably about 3 or 4 inches there. I'm just going to cut across here. Okay, so I've cut my fringes. Actually, that's a cool t-shirt, isn't it? All right, so the next step seems suggested that you line up the armholes. So you have your armholes going this way. And that way, when you put the bag over your shoulder, it's not going to have like a weird corner there, just sticking you in the hip. So we're going to fold it in half this way now, lining up our handle openings. And then all you're going to do is tie knots. double tie them there. And you just do this all the way across. And there we have our no-sew version of our bag. And we can go into the beach, throw an extra shirt in your bag, and you're ready to go. It's pretty cool. All right, so that's our no-sew version. And we're also going to do a version on the sewing machine. Oh, and if you wanted to do the no-sew version and you didn't want the fringes showing on the outside, just turn the t-shirt inside out before you start tying. That way, when you reverse it, it'll look like that. And the fringe will be on the inside rather than the outside. Okay, so for our no-sew version, we're going to start the same way. Fold our shirt in half. Put it on the inside of the armhole. And then we're going to cut around the neckline. Now for this, I am going to turn it inside out. And again, I'm going to match up the armholes. That way when I throw it over my shoulder, I won't have that funny corner sticking in my hip. Okay, so turn it inside out, match up our sides, and let me grab a few pins here. Just to hold it in place while I am sewing the seam. Okay, so let's go over to the sewing machine. Okay, so everybody's sewing machine is going to be different, a little different. I have my thread already in here and my rubber band, which helps keep me going straight. I'm going to make a couple stitches here. And then I'm going to reverse it a couple times. And it just gives it a nice tight beginnings so I don't have to worry about the seam coming out. And just feed the material through the sewing machine. And do a couple back stitches at the end and cut it off there, and we have our seam. We have our seam all the way across, and when we turn it inside out, or right side out actually, and we now have a beautiful bag that we can take to the beach. You see it lays nicely against the side of the body. Okay, so that is doing a t-shirt bag 2 ways. We have our no sew version and our sew version. And now we'll show you how to make a few pet toys. And then finally, some pet toys. So let's get started. Most of you know I have 2 cats. And of course, they love to help me with whatever I'm working on, especially when I'm trying to record something for the library. So we're going to make some toys for them. And this will work for dogs too. Dogs and cats actually both love having chewy, stuffy toys around. And what I did is, using the scraps from the sleeves that I wasn't able to use in the other projects, I just cut a few strips, and also use the hems that we cut off to make our yarns, and the hems that were around the sleeves. So we have this part here, which we cut off for the yarn, and this part here from the sleeves, and then I just cut some other thin strips from the sleeves that I didn't use. And cat toy, real easy. Let's see my other scraps here. And all I did with this is take a couple strands and then just one of these other strands that I had cut off the sleeve. Okay, so you're going to take your 2 strands, lay it across the 1 strand, and you're just going to bring it up and tie a knot. And there you go. And I actually have some of those sticks that you have, like the feather toys that you get, the feather teasers, I guess. And I was able to tie this onto one of the feather teasers, and instant teaser. You don't have to buy anything. Just shake it in front of them and they love it. And of course, now that I want them to be around, they're off doing something else. Okay, so that is our cat toy. Okay, for the dogs. You can make a rope. And one way you can do that is just by making a simple crochet chain. So we're going to start out with a loop and just wrap it around my fingers, take the short end to the back, and then I'm going to bring up a loop. And this is our starting loop. And then we're just going to use our fingers to make a crochet chain. And I'm just going to stick your fingers through the loop, grab the long part of the string, and pull it through. Just keep doing that till you get to the end. And then when you get to the end, just bring that end through and give it a pull. And you got a tug rope. You could also simply just braid some strands together. I find my strands that are about the same length here. About the same length and about the same thickness. You're going to take your 3 strands. I'm going to tie a knot. Give it a good pull. Now we are going to braid. And to braid, you have your 3 strands, the one in the middle. You're going to take one that is on the one side, just pull it over to the one that's in the middle. That then becomes the middle. And then you're going to go from the other side, bring that over top of the middle. And then that one becomes the middle. So you're just constantly going back and forth over that middle strand. Again, when you get to the end, you're just going to tie a knot. And we have another pull toy. So we have our cat teasers and some pull toys. And that is our program for today. Thanks. Have a great time.